Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel US Immigration News. We hope you are doing great. Well, in today's video, we will be talking about Trump's immigration plan for 2025.
Hey everyone! Thinking about the 25 election. Yeah, me too. Especially what a second Trump term could mean for immigration. It's smart to plan ahead.
Definitely.
We're doing a deep dive today on a YouTube video that goes into some possible changes.
Yeah.
And it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
So let's jump in and see what this might mean for you and your family.
You know what I liked about this video is it's not just abstract policies.
Right.
It's like it connects to like real people.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of thousands of people could be facing a really uncertain future.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, and these are people that have built their lives here in the US for years, sometimes decades.
Yeah, that's a huge impact.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break this down. The video focuses on programs like DACA and TPS, you know, the ones that offer temporary protection from deportation.
Right.
We've seen challenges to DACA before.
Oh, yeah.
So a second term for Trump could mean even more legal battles. So what are your thoughts on like how the administration might approach this time around?
Well, the video suggests that instead of like completely ending DACA,
Okay.
they might just make it harder to renew or to apply in the first place.
Oh, so like creating more hurdles for people.
Exactly.
Got it.
And they might argue that, you know, DACA was always meant to be temporary.
Right.
And put the pressure on Congress to find a permanent solution.
Which we know.
Which has been
Political football.
for years.
Right.
So more uncertainty for these folks and maybe even more pressure to find other ways to stay in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in for sure.
Definitely. And what about STEM students? The video mentions those executive orders that made it easier for them to get green cards.
Right, those were a big help for STEM graduates trying to go from a student visa to an employment-based green card.
So if those orders are revoked, what would that mean practically?
Well, more steps, for one thing. More paperwork, longer processing times.
A little bureaucracy. Ugh, tell me about it. It could also make it harder for them to find jobs.
Right.
You might have to find an employer who's willing to sponsor them for an H-1B visa, which is already a really complicated process.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely some obstacles there.
Okay, and speaking of different ways to stay in the U.S., the video brings up Parole in Place.
Yes.
That program that offered legal status for undocumented immigrants with family in the military.
Right.
And that was terminated during Trump's first term. So what does that mean for families in similar situations now?
Well, the fact that Parole in Place was terminated just shows how vulnerable people are when they depend on these temporary programs.
Right.
And for folks looking for more permanent options, the video suggests that a second Trump term would make those paths even harder.
Oh, wow.
We could see tighter rules for family-based immigration. It could even affect certain visas like the F2A visa for spouses and children of green card holders.
Can you give me an example of what that would look like practically for a family?
Okay, imagine you're a green card holder and you want to bring your spouse to the U.S. Okay. You've filed all the paperwork, paid the fees, and now you're stuck waiting.
Right.
Under a stricter system, those processing times could get even longer.
So even more years of being apart.
Exactly. Plus, there's talk of bringing back the public charge rule.
And what is that again?
It basically means you have to prove that you can support your spouse financially, even if they're not even living in the U.S. yet.
Wow, so that would be a huge barrier.
For families trying to reunite, absolutely.
So it sounds like for anyone waiting for a visa from abroad, there's a lot more uncertainty.
Definitely.
And potential heartbreak.
Unfortunately, yeah.
The video also mentioned travel bans possibly coming back.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one.
That would affect not just individuals, but whole communities. Think about it. Trying to visit family back home or go to a wedding, a funeral. Even those things would become almost impossible.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
And it's not just travel bans either.
Yeah.
They could really ramp up the scrutiny during those consular interviews.
Oh, God.
You know, asking way more personal questions about your background, your finances, even your social media.
Yeah, that's intense.
It would be incredibly stressful for sure.
Okay, so we've got these potential changes looming. What about folks who are already in the U.S. but are here on temporary status, like asylum?
This video is like a wake-up call for anyone in that situation.
Oh, wow.
It really emphasizes how important it is to try and find a more permanent solution.
Okay.
Whether that's through marriage or getting a job or even self-petitioning. Things could change drastically, so it's important to be proactive.
So exploring all your options and talking to a lawyer early on is really important.
Absolutely. couldn't agree more.
And speaking of specific pathways to stay in the U.S., the video talks a lot about employment-based immigration,
Yes.
particularly the H-1B visa program.
Right.
What did they say about that?
Well, it seems like under a second Trump administration, we could see much tighter regulations around the H-1B program.
Really?
Yeah, affecting everything from who's eligible to how long processing takes.
So it would be harder to get an H-1B.
They could make the requirements way stricter, which would limit the number of people who could even apply.
But wouldn't that hurt American businesses too? I mean, they rely on this program to find skilled workers.
That's a good point. And the video does acknowledge that there could be an economic impact. It could cost businesses more and even slow down innovation if they can't find the talent they need.
Okay, so it's like a balancing act.
Right. The argument from the video's perspective is that prioritizing American workers and closing those loopholes is better for the U.S. economy in the long run.
So there are arguments on both sides.
Absolutely. It's a complex issue.
So what happens to people who are already here on H-1B visas? What about their families, especially those relying on H-4 visas to work?
Yeah, the video suggests that H-4 visa holders could face some new challenges.
Oh, no.
Remember, we saw attempts to restrict their work authorization during Trump's first term?
Right.
Well, that could easily happen again.
So even for folks who have already jumped through all the hoops and gotten a visa, there's still this uncertainty about what the future holds.
It's true. The video even suggests that having a green card might not be as safe as people think.
Wait, really? I thought a green card was like the golden ticket.
Well, a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
But the video points to Trump's past stance on deporting green card holders for certain offenses.
So it's not a guarantee of staying here permanently.
Right, it's not absolute. So the video is saying that it's worth thinking about taking extra steps to really secure your status.
Like applying for citizenship.
Exactly. It could be a way to get that extra layer of protection in a time when things are really unpredictable.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here. From temporary programs like DACA and TPS to the possibility of travel bans and stricter rules for visas, it sounds like the whole immigration landscape could change dramatically.
Yeah, the video paints a pretty intense picture for sure.
But even with all this uncertainty, it's good to know there are things people can do to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about those steps in part 2. Join us after a short break as we explore how you can navigate these potential changes.
It's easy to get overwhelmed with all this information. Yeah. But, being aware of the potential changes lets you be proactive.
Right.
You can make smarter decisions for your situation.
That makes sense.
And the good news is, this video we're talking about actually has some practical tips.
Oh, good. I was hoping for some solutions, not just problems.
Me too.
So what are some of the key takeaways? Like, what can people do?
Well, first off, if you've got any pending immigration cases,
Okay.
whether it's a visa application or a green card adjustment, don't wait.
So speed is key.
Speed is key. Get that process moving as fast as you can.
Makes sense. But it's also important to make sure those applications are accurate and complete, right?
Oh, absolutely. Rushing things and making mistakes could actually lead to even more delays.
Right, even rejections.
Exactly. Especially now with all this extra scrutiny. So the video really stresses getting legal help to make sure everything is done right.
Speaking of legal help, the video mentions something called a mandamus lawsuit.
Oh, yeah.
Can you break that down for us? What is that exactly?
Sure. So let's say you filed an application and it's just stuck.
In limbo.
Stuck in processing for months, maybe even years.
Oh, gosh.
A mandamus lawsuit is a way to ask the court to force the government to do something about your case.
So like, hey, you're legally obligated to process this in a reasonable time frame?
Exactly. It's a way to try and get things moving.
That sounds complicated.
It is. It's not something you want to try to do yourself.
Right, definitely need a lawyer for that.
Yeah, an experienced immigration attorney is a must.
Yeah.
And even then, there's no guarantee you'll win.
Okay.
But it can be a good option if you're facing ridiculous delays.
Okay, so speed, accuracy, and maybe a mandamus lawsuit if things get really stalled. What other proactive steps does the video suggest?
Well, they talk a lot about sponsorship,
Okay.
especially for employment-based or family-based visas.
Makes sense.
If you can get sponsored, whether it's by an employer or a family member, start that process now.
I imagine sponsorship becomes even more important if immigration policies get stricter.
Oh, absolutely. It's like having someone vouch for you.
Right, like they're putting their reputation on the line for you.
It's exactly. It adds credibility to your case. Shows you have a good reason to be in the U.S. The video says having a sponsor, especially a reputable employer, can really boost your chances.
So we've got speeding things up, accuracy, and getting sponsored if you can. All great advice. But I'm also hearing a big theme here. the importance of getting legal help.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
essential. With how complex this system is and all the potential changes, a good immigration lawyer can make all the difference.
Right, they can figure out the best options for your specific situation.
Exactly. And help you avoid making costly mistakes.
Okay, so we've talked about being proactive with cases, lawsuits, and sponsorships. But what about the bigger picture? The video kind of hinted at a broader impact on U.S. society.
You're right. It doesn't go into a ton of detail, but it does raise an important question. What are the social and economic consequences of these changes?
Yeah, let's talk about that. What are some of the ripple effects you see happening if these changes go into effect?
Well, one big one is the impact on industries that rely on immigrant talent.
Right.
Tech healthcare research.
Right, places where they need highly skilled workers.
Exactly. And if it becomes much harder to get H-1Bs and other work visas, it could lead to a shortage of skilled workers.
And that could hurt innovation and economic growth.
It's not just about the individuals, it's about the whole U.S. economy.
Right, it's all connected.
And on the social side, think about the impact on families and communities.
Yeah.
All that increased scrutiny, the longer wait, times the possibility of being separated. It creates a lot of fear and anxiety.
It's a huge emotional toll.
Absolutely. It affects people's lives, their dreams, their sense of belonging.
And beyond individual experiences, there's the message it sends to the world,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the U.S. has always been seen as a nation of immigrants.
It's a melting pot.
Right. But if we become more restrictive, what message does that send?
It's a good question. It's a complex issue with so many layers, and this deep dive has really shown how much is at stake.
It really has.
But I'm glad we're focusing on the proactive steps and the power of information.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power when it comes to navigating this system.
Understanding the potential changes, getting legal advice, exploring your options. It can make a world of difference.
Couldn't agree more.
Even though the future is uncertain, there's something empowering about taking control
For sure.
and being prepared.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the different visa categories and all these potential changes, but this video left me with a really interesting question.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, this video focused on a possible second Trump term, but a lot of these issues are relevant no matter who's in the White House.
That's so true. Immigration is always going to be a big topic.
Right.
So understanding the complexities is crucial for everyone.
Exactly. This deep dive isn't just about predicting the future.
It's about being informed.
It's about being prepared to have these conversations and advocate for policies that we believe in.
Well said. I love that.
Yeah.
And on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the potential future of U.S. immigration.
It's been fascinating.
I hope you found it informative and empowering.
I think we all did. And remember, it's not just about staying informed.
Right.
It's about using that knowledge to make the world a more just and compassionate place.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those conversations going. It's easy to get stuck thinking just about the U.S. side of things.
Right.
But like you said, immigration's a global issue. So how do you think these changes in U.S. policy would affect global migration and relationships with other countries?
That's a really good question, and one the video doesn't really touch on. If the U.S. makes it harder to immigrate here, it could push people to go to other countries instead.
Makes sense.
Places that are seen as more welcoming.
So like Canada, Australia, maybe some European countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We could see a lot more people applying to go to those places.
So it's almost like a ripple effect.
Yeah, kind of a push and pull.
The U.S. gets stricter and other countries look more appealing.
And that could create some really interesting situations.
Like what?
Well, you could have countries competing for talent or struggling to handle more immigration.
Right.
And it could even affect diplomatic relationships between countries.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. It really shows you how interconnected the world is.
Definitely.
What happens in one place can have consequences everywhere.
Absolutely.
I'm also curious about what this would mean for international students. The U.S. has always been a top choice for students from around the world.
For sure.
But will that still be true if our policies become more restrictive?
That's a good question. If the U.S. isn't as welcoming to international students, we might lose out on attracting the best and brightest.
Right. They might go to universities in other countries that have better immigration policies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that could hurt research collaborations and those exchange programs.
So instead of a brain drain from other countries to the U.S., it's like we're pushing those talented people away.
It's a possibility for sure.
And what about the economic side of things?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about the impact on specific industries.
Right.
But what about the overall U.S. economy?
Well, the video suggests that limiting immigration could hurt innovation and slow down economic growth.
Okay.
Immigrants have always played a huge role in starting businesses and creating jobs in the U.S.
Right.
So if we make it harder for them to come here, it could have consequences we haven't even thought of.
It's a risk.
Yeah, it's a gamble, for sure.
Uh-huh.
The video argues that putting American workers first is ultimately better. But there are definitely potential downsides, too.
It's complicated.
Very complicated. And I think this deep dive has really shown just how multifaceted immigration is.
It really is.
It's not just about laws and rules, it's about people's lives and their dreams.
And their contributions to society.
Exactly.
I think that's something important for everyone to remember.
I agree.
It's easy to get lost in the legal details,
For sure.
but we can't forget about the human element.
Absolutely. Immigration is a deeply personal issue for so many people.
It is.
So as we move forward, we have to have these conversations with empathy and understanding.
Even when we disagree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to find common ground and work towards solutions that are fair for everyone.
Well said. We've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have.
From potential changes to programs like DACA and TPS to stricter visa requirements and even the global implications.
Yeah,
It's clear that immigration is a complex and constantly changing issue.
it really is. And even though there's a lot of uncertainty, I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
I agree. It's been fascinating and really thought-provoking.
Definitely.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave everyone with this. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
I love that.
Your voice matters, and you can make a difference.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the possible future of U.S. immigration.
It's been great having you here.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, it's not just about staying informed, it's about using that knowledge to create a more just and compassionate world.
Couldn't agree more.
So until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep the conversation going.
Donald Trump potentially returning to office in 2025, significant changes to US immigration policies are expected. Many executive orders and policies enacted during the Biden administration, such as those benefiting DACA recipients, TPS holders, and STEM students, could be swiftly reversed. This would leave individuals in a vulnerable immigration status in a precarious position. Those currently residing in the US are encouraged to explore pathways to more secure status, such as marriage or employment-based green cards, while opportunities remain open. For those outside the US awaiting visa interviews or a family reunification under preference categories, the challenges could intensify. A return of travel bans, stricter public charge rules, and prolonged visa processing times are likely. To mitigate this risk, applicants should expedite their cases wherever possible, consider mandamus lawsuit for delays and stay vigilant about shifting policies. Employment-based immigration could also face greater scrutiny. The H-1B visa program, which has been a critical pathway for skilled workers, may see new restrictions on eligibility, higher wage requirements, and longer processing times. Additionally, H-4 visa holders, primarily spouses of H-1B recipients, could lose their work authorization, impacting many immigrant families. Trump's approach may prioritize enforcement against individuals with a criminal record, including green card holders with offenses like DUIs. This could lead to increased deportation and stricter conditions for maintaining lawful permanent residency. Green card holders are advised to apply for citizenship if eligible, as this provides greater security against potential policy changes. Family-based immigration categories such as F2A for spouses and minor children for green card holders are less vulnerable to immediate change since they are codified by Congress. However, broader legislative efforts to overhaul the immigration system could affect these categories in the long term. Similarly, same-sex marriage-based green card application would remain protected unless there are significant legal challenges to marriage equality. Consular processing is expected to become more stringent with longer wait times and more rigorous interviews. Employment-based categories like EB3 and visa for skilled workers, L1 and O1, may face heightened scrutiny delays. Despite these challenges, some pathway, such as the national interest waiver for self-patronage, remain promising option for qualified individuals.